I'm trying to use very outdated strategies of a child to navigate the challenges of an adult, right? They're not working anymore, but I don't know what else to do.
Hi, and welcome to the Living Richly podcast. I'm Eric Deschamps, here with my best friends and co-hosts, Trevor Munven and Rob Dale. We've been talking over the last few episodes about what it means to live our best life. And the lessons we've been learning and sharing with you were not gleaned from a book, although books have certainly impacted us. These stories, these lessons have really been forged in the furnace of adversity, living day-to-day life, trying to figure shit out. And a big commitment from all of us in launching this podcast was to really be open and vulnerable about our own story in the trenches and what we've learned, what we're learning, and what we're still trying to learn. And today it's my privilege to introduce to you to Trevor Munven, dear friend of mine, dear friend of ours, who's going to be sharing his story today. Trevor and I met just over 10 years ago now. So over a decade, and we're still friends, which says a lot, right? We're still friends.
That's a record for you.
That's a record for me. Exactly. And Trevor and I developed a friendship really over in business. We met through business contacts, hit it off right away, had an instant rapport, became fast friends. Our friendship developed very, very quickly. Somewhat similar backgrounds, but I just think there was a lot of commonality in what we had experienced in our lives that connected us. You'll never meet a more intelligent, charismatic guy than Trevor. One of the things I value deeply about him is when he sets his heart on something, he just goes for it. And such a joy to watch him follow his heart and follow that sense of adventure. And I'm super looking forward to hearing his story today.
Yeah, I got to meet you around that same time, around 10 years ago. I remember actually the very first time we met was at a coffee shop. And we're basically working for a mutual contact, and you were there to just to pitch some things around business. And I can remember sitting and listening to you as you were talking, and you kind of went on some tangents as he's prone to do.
I'm sure we'll see some of that today.
It'll be a long episode. Yeah, go off on some tangents on some things, and he was talking about ancient wisdom, and he was going. And I remember sitting there thinking, this is one of the most interesting, fascinating human beings that I've been around in a long time. I need to get to know this guy better. And then I think it was not that long after that we were doing a presentation at an event where we had a booth set up together,
that's right.
And got a chance to spend more time with you, and that really started this. This was, there are very few people in life where you need to be around them more, and that's certainly who you have been in my life. And over the 10 years, that has continually been a theme where I over and over again am amazed the stuff I learned from you, the depth of that knowledge, the intelligence, the perspective on how you bring things into clarity, and especially the words, the wordsmith, the words that you use.
He has the best.
He has the best words, and the words, but really the insight that you bring to language has caused me to have a deeper appreciation for why language matters. The words we use matter. That really stemmed from conversations with you, and I'm so excited for today and to hear you share your story and the journey that you've been on.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah, from friends to becoming mutual clients. You had your own business going. We had ours going. To starting a business together. And now the three of us as business partners and best friends. It's been quite a journey. And I know yours is rich with, like the rest of us, some great moments, some difficult moments, some devastating moments, and all of that has shaped you to be the person you are today. It's your story. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, well, first, guys, thanks. We were in another meeting recently, and we were chatting about it afterwards. And I remember during that meeting saying, "Listen, I don't normally share private stuff," and I shared something with the team that, frankly, was pretty innocuous. Is that a word?
That's a good word.
And,
Wow. Can he spell it though?
We'll be putting a link to a thesaurus and dictionary in the show notes in case you get
most
lost
of
at
my
any
words
point.
are good, but some are gooder. And I remember we were talking about doing all of this, and Eric, you were great because you're like, so, like we've agreed to be vulnerable and open, and this thing you said where like you're sharing and not all that comfortable, like, are you sure? I was like, yeah. I was like, no. So today's a great day. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We are here again. You'll notice bourbon once again on the table. Cheers and drink before we kick off.
Yeah.
Steve.
It's the fortified bourbon series that'll come through. It's an interesting question when somebody says, "So tell me the story of your life."
Wow, it's huge.
There's so many ways you can do that. There's and honestly, I've struggled to try and find some footing on it. I'm not sure I've found it, but I'm just going to start, and I'm going to trust that I will find it as I work my way through it. I think if I had to go to one theme in my life, it would be this sense of searching. And the challenge is it's taken me a very long time to figure out what I was even looking for. Like, it's like I've lost something, but I've forgotten what I've lost, but I'm still looking. Right. And so that, I think that'll make more sense as I describe this, but that has been a huge piece for me. In many ways, like I look and go, it all looks pretty normal. It all looks pretty normal. It didn't feel normal, but it looked normal. I have a lovely family. There was no drama in my family, really.
No drama in your family.
No drama in my
Said
family.
No one.
Yeah.
No major things. Listen to Rob's episode. You
You want drama?
Oh.
Rob's episode. Or any day with Rob.
Or any day with Rob.
Drama's my middle name.
My mom and dad still together, still alive to this day. Saw them not that long ago. We grew up in a small rural village. I think it's doubled. It's like 400 people now.
Wow.
But my dad was a police officer, OPP, and a hostage negotiator for the OPP as well. He's been retired for a long time. 3 older sisters. And as you well know, because you know him pretty well, I have an identical twin brother, Chris.
Otherwise lovingly known as Spare Parts or Organ Farm.
That's right.
That's what we refer to him as.
Chris, go to the gym and stay off the alcohol. That's my kidney. That's my kidney.
Yeah.
I call dibs. That's the way it works.
How did you like lie to your dad or rebel with your dad if he was a hostage? Like that's
Right?
gotta be
Isn't
the
that
absolute worst
father to
have as a hostage
Hostage
negotiator. Like, how do you
It'd be
negotiate?
like I'm only talking to mom.
Right.
Know
He's
your
like,
audience.
well,
Know
let's
your
talk
audience.
about
Know your
that. It's like, I'll tell you, it's frustrating as a teenager. Especially,
No doubt.
But I think particularly for Chris and I, like a lot of that kind of the behavioral pieces that were so automatic, I think, for my dad, in terms of his ability to help people on their worst day, trying to stop it from getting any worse, right? And with people who hate you as soon as you show up. No one's going, oh, thank God the negotiator's here.
Right.
Somebody please talk me down.
Yes.
Right? Like there's this tension that plays out, and about how you learn about the nature of trust and the integrity that's required, because you can't lie.
Right.
People know when you're lying. At some sense they know. And so how do you be, an authentic representation of yourself in a difficult circumstance? Like all of the language stuff, the behavioral stuff, all of those pieces, I think, in a lot of ways, Dad was the wellspring for that, for probably for both Chris and I. We're small village. As I said, we're down in Southern Ontario, haven't been down there in a long time. A rural context, but we weren't farmers. So I'm on a farm now, and you guys describe me as a farmer. Like, it's so new. It's so new. And I don't think any of the neighbors are calling me a farmer here.
It just went really well with 2 ex-preachers and a farmer.
It reads well. So it reads well on the
website. Yeah.
But grew up in rural areas, and that actually becomes more important over time as well, because there was a move away from that, and there's been a move back, and that's been really important for us. I think You know, when people say, if the chapter was the early years, you know,
Yes.
what would it say? That there'd be a few things that characterize it. One is actually about being a twin. And Chris means the world to me, right? You can't start life closer to anyone
Right.
than as an identical twin, right?
true.
Like you know, we'll joke we were womb mates and you know, all of that. We fight over who came out first and who kicked out
Who did come out
and
first.
Yeah. I'm the older brother.
Okay, excuse
Okay.
me.
Wow.
No,
That's loaded.
Yeah. Sorry, I asked. Wow.
Don't go there.
Chris, don't you forget it. But so there we are though in a small town, a relatively large family, like 5 kids. At that time, red hair, freckles, glasses, crooked teeth, identical twins, dad a cop. It is the ripest material to be bullied.
Sure.
And I'll tell you that played out pretty large for me growing up as a kid. Some was like the pretty obvious stuff. Some of it was the more subtle stuff that played out, but it's always this kind of tension around that. And so you end up with this, for me, not you end up. How did I end up? I ended up trying to navigate my way through this so that basically I wasn't going to feel pain as a kid. And so part of it was, I remember in one class, teacher asked a question, I didn't know the answer. And so like at recess, I got like roughed up over it. I'm like, well, I'm not going to do that again. So I start reading, right? Encyclopedias. I'm like, so those are a series of books with lots of information on
For
those.
our younger audience who has no idea what an
God, I
encyclopedia
feel
is,
old when I use that word.
just look it up on Wikipedia.
If you dial your library,
This says you two saying tune in. Listen to you two. There's no tuning to join the show.
Tuning into the conversation.
Allow me to distract. So
Back to your story.
So I realized that if I didn't know things, I'd get hurt.
wow.
So I start learning,
Wow, what a script.
reading. So then shortly after that, teacher asks a question. I answer. Bam! I get beat up. Because I like, oh, know it all. You got all the answers, dude. So I'm like, it was one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't. Right. So what I learned was I needed to have all the answers, but I had to be very careful about how I express them. And so to navigate it, to try. So this is me as a young kid trying to build these strategies to figure out, to say, how do I not feel these? How can I avoid these negative experiences? Right? We're wired to avoid pain.
Right.
And those, like, that just kept growing. Like, that set of strategies, in some ways you kind of go, like, you know, I listened to you guys describe me at the beginning and I can hear all the scripts kicking in, right? The counter script saying, okay, how do I, you know, is that true? Is that really? I'm like, no. Like these guys, you have not been afraid in the past to tell me what you really think about things. And I take you at your word in this moment as well. And I think that's a sign of a very healthy relationship. But, you know, if there's been a drive around knowing things, a lot of it was like self-defense. It's like, and so I would try and learn as much as I can. And those became habits that, right, have lots of benefits, but not from a good source, right? Not from a good source. You know, with Chris, you know, you've got, you know, most people go, wow, it's so weird when I hear my voice on a podcast or whatever. I'm like, it's not for me. I've heard it my whole life, right? Like Chris sounds like me on a podcast. So, you know, I've never kind of had that shock because you've got this doppelganger out there who looks and sounds like you and who genetically at a DNA level can do anything you can do. Right. So very often we're trying to say, what makes me special? And my answer is nothing. Because there's this guy who can literally do exactly what I do as well. And so that became a real challenge for me. What it did mean was I did an awful lot of thinking about differentiation. What separates two things? What makes something special, right? How do you distinguish between things that look really similar? And from a marketing perspective, that's really valuable. Right. If you say you got all these competitors, how do you stand out? Right. And so that really served well. But the things we tell ourselves that go behind it, those scripts that we're reading, we're telling ourselves, a lot of them for me
came from how I was trying to I guess, negotiate my relationship with Chris, right? Chris, who I adore, right? Chris, who I just look and go, that guy's amazing. That guy's amazing. But my view for a long time wasn't just that he was amazing, that Chris was amazing, but that Chris was better than me. And so that's a tough one because it throws you in competition, right? To say, what am I better than Chris at? He's the this one, I'm the that one. And it doesn't help that people everywhere are going, oh, so you're taller, smarter, faster, fatter, shorter, more musical, more whatever. Like that's being fed and fueled the whole time by everyone else. And to this day, people go, oh, so Chris is more this than that, or you're more this than that. And I'm like, do you do this with other people?
Yeah. Right.
Like it's actually it's a pretty difficult thing to do. And to this day, it's like still like, I kind of have to manage myself as I hear that and go, they just don't know. Right. They just don't know what that's like. The darkest version of that, though, wasn't just that Chris was better. It was like maybe there was only supposed to be one. And on really dark days, like that's a tough one. That's a tough one. And there were long periods of time with very dark days, kind of going, maybe like I wasn't even supposed to be here. It was supposed to be that guy. Right. That's not a good script to live with. No. Right. And so
twin or not, it's amplified. I can just appreciate how much it would be amplified as a twin, having that doppelganger out there. Right. But there are so many folks listening that could like so relate to, I was an accident.
Right.
I shouldn't be here.
Unwanted. Unloved.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like there are times where we can be so close to despair, like true despair. And there's times where people fully enter that. And, you know, when you see that, when you see people take their own lives in that moment, like there are times I look and I go, I get that. Right. I get why you do that. I could see that. Yeah. That's not where I am now. But there are times where you look back and go, because it just feels so future. I go, whatever I do, Chris, you're so damn competent. Like bless your heart. It's so good. I was using my Southern.
That was good. That was good Southern.
Good. Does he have a Southern accent? Or is that how we distinguish the two of you?
Dude, he does it better. No, and to this day, like Chris and I, we diverge and then we reconvene. We will go in the most different directions and then we arrive at the same place and we're like, oh, come on. And literally once Chris came to visit, we hadn't seen each other in a few years, shows up in Ottawa and we're wearing the exact same clothes. Like there's like all of that twinness stuff that's happening.
Yeah. And then I remember he moved in and you couldn't get him out.
Couldn't get him out. Maybe he never left. Yeah.
He's out west.
He's out west, yeah.
That's right. No one's seen him in a long time.
We haven't seen him since he left.
But I feel healthier than ever.
He needed that kidney, apparently.
Yeah. But all of that, like not one drop of that is about Chris.
Right,
it's about me and what I was telling myself about what was
stories
going on around me, right? And these are those scripts, those things that we repeat over and over, where we do need to test them. We do need to figure that out. Right. So I had this twin thing happening. I had this bully thing happening. Then I would say, you know, probably a good healthy dose of regular existential dread about, you know, what is the nature of the universe? Where do I fit in it? And I think part of that was that searching, like, why, what is this? What is this about? Part of that was around faith as well. I've not been on the journey you two guys have been on, but I've been on my own around it as well. And found that, there was a lot of pain in that context. There was a lot of hurt in that context. I remember when, you know, we decided to leave one church I was very active in, so a large church. We were like really, really active, and it was crickets afterwards. And it was interesting. One person reached out afterwards. It was with a card, and it was the most unlikely person. I never anticipated that outreach. And the rest was like, I don't know, hundreds of families of silence. And it's like, ow.
Silence can be deafening, can't it?
Yeah. So, you know, in the course of this, you know, a lot of pictures have been broken, have been shattered as you work your way through. And then it's like, okay, well, now what? It's still that searching, right? In a work context is like, well, all right, well, let's go do stuff. And that was, I've had a chance to do all kinds of things in all kinds of organizations, from small ones to big ones around the world and boardroom, really, really a great experience that way, really diverse. The challenge is, while there were all kinds of things people would point at as successes, none of it mattered. Like, it didn't seem to deliver. Like, it was basically irrelevant. And the half-life of the feeling when you having accomplished something was so short, it basically, didn't matter. So I would go to the only other move I have, which is like, I'd work harder. Right. And it would fuel this cycle where all I would find was it didn't matter how hard I worked or what I accomplished. I still feel like crap. Right. I'll tell you, that was absolutely demoralizing, because you're like, well, that's my move, and no amount of using it is going to get me what I'm after. And it was just so empty and so void of meaning. Right. We've talked about this before. You know, that exercise we talked about, the timeline exercise, where you say, okay, here's the date you were born, here's where you are today, and here's you in the future. You're 80, you're 100, you're whatever. So you're partway through this thing. What's happened so far? And we put like good positive stuff above the line and lousy crappy things below the line. And I remember doing that exercise, and the disturbing thing for me at the end of it was there was a period of almost 10 years with nothing above or below the line. And I was like, yeah, I remember that. I remember like just the sheer emptiness of it. I remember periods of time where I'd be on a long drive, like for a business trip or whatever. And I remember just like sobbing in the car going, why am I so sad? Why am I crying? Like, what, where is this from? Like, I couldn't locate it anywhere, because I'm like, look, I got this family and I got this job and I got these things and all this stuff, and like just this terrible, terrible feeling. And then you're like, okay, like try and get there, pull yourself together, and then like
muscle through,
put on the show, do the work. Yeah. All of that. Right. So there was this futility to it as well. Not surprisingly, that is not a, good breeding ground for a good, healthy environment in relationship, right? So with Carrie and I, we've been together a long, long time. It's been a very tough marriage. We're really blessed. We're in a great place right now, the best place we've ever been.
It's wonderful to see.
Yeah, it's been nice, and you guys have seen a lot of that transformation that's happened. And that's both of us doing our work. That's both of us having moments where everything has fallen apart. That's moments where we've both had massive uncertainty about what are we doing. But there's also a kind of a perseverance in all of this, like and from both of us to say, how do we do this? But there's, again, it just kind of fed this, I don't know, like, what is this thing? And that searching, can't find it. But it's almost dreamlike, where you've lost something and you find yourself searching everywhere, but you can't find it. That's how my life has looked to me. And it's been so frustrating, really frustrating. Right. And there's this play of that sense of pain that comes with it. Then comes with this instinct to numb it, to say, I got to get rid of that. And so it's to try to eliminate then anything that's going to push it either way. And I think that's been a lot of it as well. So again, like, no major drama moments, like just kind of this slow, I don't even know what, drop into despair and frustration as I'm trying to use very outdated strategies of a child to navigate the challenges of an adult, right? And they're not working anymore, but I don't know what else to do.
Did you like, I can imagine a lot of people listening that will relate so much to what you shared in that, to your point, the good family, no drama or little drama or, all of that. And they're almost feeling, I'm feeling this way. And now I'm also feeling guilty that I'm feeling this way.
Right.
What's wrong with me that I'm feeling that I should be happy? I should, right? The shoulding all over yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
that should piece was massive.
Yeah.
Right. And it's, I found myself so stuck in even how to think about what I thought was happening. Right. It's like none of my frameworks were working around it. And so I just keep working harder. You just keep working harder. It's like those videos. Have you seen like winter videos of cars, usually in the city on a hill, that start sliding down the hill?
Yeah.
And they're not going fast.
Right.
But they're sliding and you can see it. And you look at the bottom and you go, I know what's about to happen. Like it's inevitable, right?
You slow motion crash.
Right? They're on black ice. They're drifting. And the only question is, how much damage is this going to cause? How hurt are they going to end up being? Yeah. Right? That's how it felt. Right? It's just like, I know this isn't what I need to be doing. Right? I may be pumping the brakes and working as hard as I can. But like even going 1 kilometer an hour down the hill, and you're like, I'm going to hit something and I can't stop it. I can't steer.
The collision is inevitable.
Yeah. It felt so helpless. So helpless. Without realizing that you, at that kind of speed in particular, you can step out of the car.
right.
Anytime you want.
Wow.
Right. But I'm like
That's
doubling
so
down,
good.
pumping the brakes and steering, going, maybe you could just
exit.
Left, And I know, Rob, when we were doing your story, and I asked you very specifically, right, that moment of clarity where you said, all right, I'm about to change things. That was like you stepping out of the car.
Yeah.
Right. And I wanted to understand that better.
Yeah.
So that wasn't just for everyone else. That was
Right.
like, how did you do that, Rob? Like, how does that work? I now like the other videos of near misses. It's the near miss, because I think in some ways I've also had a lot of near misses where through some kind of luck or grace or chance or divine intervention or karma or whatever, it didn't explode at the end. It wasn't the tragic ending that it might have been. And so now I have this moment of grace to say, how do you want to do things?
It's interesting because one of the things that when I think about you, the notion of compassion and the way that you embrace and demonstrate compassion to so many people that you interact with. We used to be a bit of a running joke. I don't know if this is something we should be joking about, but a running joke that every one of your clients would end up crying in meetings, right?
Is that compassion or
right, that's this,
or something else?
No one's ever asked that before. How awkward.
The idea that and for you to hear you talk about near misses, it's there but by the grace of God I go, right? And this idea that these near misses, it's really helped create that person you are today and being able to demonstrate compassion.
Yeah, it's well, and I think, Eric, you uttered these words in an earlier episode about how very often we're giving to others what we need to give to ourselves. And that is, I'll tell you, that's 100% true. As you described that, Rob, is trying to find compassion for myself, because I look and go, how could I have gotten all this wrong?
Wow.
Which is also not a useful script. For those of you who have that, give me a shout. Like, let's talk about it. There are better ones.
Let's rewrite that.
Well, because that's the thing with the script, is you can rewrite it. You can choose any script you want. And that has been a very active piece for me, is to start to redefine what is it I want to tell me about me, or about the world that I'm in, or about other people. Spent a long time very, very black and white about things, right or wrong. And I remember, you mentioned Dr. Sherry before. We'll get Sherry on a show here at some point. I remember telling her, like, okay, like, I get it, less black and white, okay, more gray. And she's like, Trev, the world's color. Like, it's like your monitor has a larger range than you do. It's like millions of colors.
It's not just black,
white and gray.
Black and white and gray.
Shit.
Really?
I had moved from 2 to like 3, maybe. And I thought I was doing really well. And we had a good laugh about that. But it's about trying to give myself the compassion to embrace a far more complicated world than I'm giving it credit for.
Right.
But it's a desire to simplify it so I can feel safer in it.
Right.
Right. And it can exercise some kind of control over it and myself and what I think is happening, how I protect myself, how I protect my family, recognizing there's actually an inherent futility to that because right. We had, remember that microburst went through, knocked down all those trees. You guys were out in the middle of the bush, like trees are falling all over the place here. You can't stop that stuff.
No.
You can't protect everybody from everything. And it was about learning to be okay when things are not okay.
Yeah.
Right. When things are hard.
Yeah.
And to accept the discomfort that comes with that as well.
Yeah. You've been sharing a number of obviously lessons learned in the trenches, right? How your various experiences and contexts have shaped the way you view life, you view yourself, how you approach your relationships. What would you say are the major lessons? What's revealed itself to you along the way that you feel has been most significant? Because you've been talking about your past.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a bit important part of our story. But I know there's a lot of really cool stuff happening now. What would you say have been some of the most important lessons learned that have been central to your transformation?
Yeah. I suppose realizing that I am better than Chris.
Right.
No.
Matter of fact, this whole podcast was designed to communicate that one message. Sorry, Chris. Sorry, Chris.
No, not that at all. Not that at all.
Yeah.
I think there is maybe finally a recognition of enoughness.
Right.
Right. From a point of, at one point.
Do you mean like being enough?
Being enough. Yeah. And accepting myself. And that I don't need to perform my way to any kind of worth. Where before I thought if I'm not succeeding or exceeding or winning or growing or, excelling at whatever, if I'm not setting higher and higher standards and then knocking it out of the park, that none of that actually affects my sense of worth. That I am whole and complete just as I am. And that's not 100% one. That's one I'm kind of working on.
That's a big one. We've been talking about how self-acceptance is you can't go far down the journey to transformation and becoming the best version of you without first starting there.
That's right.
Right. And I don't know if you ever truly move off of that one. I think you do some work, you come to a level of accepting yourself to a degree, and then life will test that resolve, test that new commitment, and so that you have the opportunity to deepen your resolve around it.
Yeah. It's when I'm listening to that really well, boy, like the world changes.
Right.
The world changes, and there's days there's still some dark days, and you guys see them, right? And you guys have been really compassionate and full of grace through that, right? And to be in a context where you can be with people who can see that and still fully accept you, it's like, wow. Right. We've said before, you need to do this with other people, not just any people though, too. It's to find those people who can accept you, but also still encourage you and prompt you and help you and to bring all of that. So I think that's been huge. The other part is listening more to what actually makes me feel good. Which sounds really simple and obvious, but has not been simple or obvious for me.
For most, I think,
maybe for most.
I think that's it. I don't think. It's such a common problem.
Yeah,
because we spend so much of our life numbing pain, running from pain, that paying attention to what feels good, we see it as a temporary relief from our demons, right? Yeah. And yet when we start paying attention to it and saying, I want more of that, I want to live in that direction more. Yeah. That's a big shift.
It's huge.
Not an easy one to make.
It's huge. Yeah. And that led us to this little farm here, right? Yeah. And when Carrie and I first stood up, like just up the hill here, and we looked out, we're like, we just have to do this. we have to do it. We didn't have a plan. We weren't planning to buy it. I remember what I told you guys. You guys were like, what?
We thought you were crazy.
Yeah.
Well, farm.
Those are not mutually exclusive.
No,
but
that's true.
We were saying that.
True the first time.
Won't be the last time.
But there was a leap.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there was a moment of listening going, listen, we're not sure where this is going to go, but we need to do this. We need to do it. And we did. And we're like, oh my God, what do we do? And I remember because like we've got this vineyard here, and I remember Karen like holding each other. There's like this beautiful kind of romantic moment full of silence. And I said, what the fuck are we supposed to do with a vineyard? Like, we never wanted a vineyard. We hardly drink. Like, we didn't know anything. So it's, but even that has required us to live into something which has been really, really healthy, right? So back to that kind of rural context as a kid, there is part of that recovery where I felt good then.
Oh, yeah.
I feel good outside. I feel good actually with plants. And working with plants and taking care of them. And I got lots to take care of. And it gets me up early. I love sunrise and sunset, and I'm out there for that. And so I'm not suggesting everybody needs to go buy a farm, but it's to find those things. What a relief.
And you can hit the unsubscribe button anytime.
But it was to be willing when you hear that or feel that to take an action in that direction, right? And I think Carrie and I have been doing a lot of work that made it easy for us to take that leap. And we've been doing a lot of figuring out since, right? It's like one set of challenges after another. But to have a Thanksgiving dinner where we grew everything we ate was really, really satisfying at a level I just can't describe how good that felt for me. And the truth is, it doesn't matter if it feels good for anybody else. That felt really good. Like that really mattered. And so I think that key part as that the compassion is starting to play out, and then we're starting to take more and more actions that are aligned with what feels right. And it's not just like, I got a feeling I'm going to go. It was a listening exercise. There was a deeper listening around what's missing out of our lives here, and how can we start to not just plan for it, because we had started to talk about what would happen when the kids go away to school and things like that. And we thought, well, maybe more time in the country or traveling or that kind of thing. What we tried to do is say, how do we move that into the present, right? To this point of waiting and being stuck, right? I have a decade where I'm like just stuck with nothing in it. I don't want to do that anymore.
You know, it's interesting if you have an opportunity to listen to the podcast where I share my story. The longer I shared my story, the brighter it got. And the longer
the room got brighter and brighter.
Right. And the longer Trevor has shared, the darker
it's getting. And that's just indicative of the time of day.
But, yeah, it really is. Yeah. It's like when a good movie, they put rain when it's great. The foreshadowing. You know, I say this when I hear you and I see you living richly now.
Yeah.
Wendy and I were having a conversation the other day and was saying, I don't know, in different ways, because you both are expressing living richly in beautiful ways. When I watch you and Carrie, and when I have the opportunity to do that here at the farm, and Wendy and I, last time we came to visit, both of us were commenting on this, was that how absolutely beautiful it is to watch the two of you here together. And it's such an incredible, you can just see two people truly living out purpose and fulfill all of those things in the way that you guys interact with each other, just the way you communicate, the way you touch, the way you, just all of it. I just see something so beautiful, and the farm is clearly a part of that for you.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
What are some of the other ways that you feel you're living richly these days? I mean, the farm is obviously a huge part of that. Farm's
a huge part of it. I have more control over my own thinking now than I have ever had. That capacity to choose our thoughts and to shape our mindset, right? And we chatted before. Honestly, Ben Bergeron's book really, really helped me. It really helped me. I think it found a lot of language for things I've been sensing. And I was like, now I've got the language. I can start to work with that more. Right. And to shape things. So I think that control over my own thinking, more so than ever before. There's still a lot of thoughts that are firing without, like, where'd that come from? But I think that's an endless exercise as well. But one where the that sense of recognition that, you know, the only control we really have is that internal control,
right.
And to let go of all of trying to control all of the external stuff and to give full attention to what's going on inside is really, really shifting things. I mean, that's been huge as well. I think the other area for me where it's really showing up is in relationships. Those have not been easy or automatic for me. But they just get better and better, probably first and foremost with my own kids as well. I have teenagers. That's a joy. There are good days and bad days. There's days where I feel like, I'm just screwing this thing up. And there's other days where I'm kind of going, no, I'm not. Let's take a longer view here. And the relationship with Carrie as well around that. And I think it's kind of like assembling the people in my life who are going to genuinely support what I'm doing, work to understand it, be accepting of where I'm at and what I'm working my way through, and a chance to do the same, with them, right? To bring that reciprocity to it. There are people who are not in my life, who had been for a long time, and not out of malice, but definitely out of, I think, a recognition of what do I really need and who do I really need in order to make this work. And again, those doors are open, but it's also about saying I've got to be clear on who I need in my life and whose voices am I going to listen to and whose aren't I? Because a lot of the scripts that we have are other people's voices speaking through us.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And so we do need to be careful around that.
Yeah.
So I think that'd be the other part as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. Mm-hmm. It's been so great to hear. It's amazing how even as your best friend sitting here listening to you tell your story, you learn something new. You discover something that you didn't just appreciate the same way. So appreciate your openness and your willingness to do that. Before we wrap up, for our listeners today, if there's one or two things that you would say to someone who's listening, who can relate to many of the things that you have experienced and are growing through, how would you encourage them today?
My fear would be for the person stuck in that 10-year waiting period of nothingness, working their ass off, right? That is a person for whom I have deep, deep compassion. Right. If you find yourself there, I would say, what would you say? I would say, don't wait. There's an element of shaking it off, right? You did it with a bike trip, like you took a motorcycle trip to do it. You needed to be alone and reflect and go, what really matters. I think that time of reflection and remembering, going, is this what I want? And if not, is to say, what is it that I truly want and need in my life? And listen to that, spend some time with that, clear it. Don't, right? At a certain point, busy doesn't cut it anymore, right? And to say, I need to, because no one else can do this, I need to create this space to say, what do I really need here? And to listen really deeply to that, and then gently take small steps to put it in motion. We talked about this recently. Like for me, it's little bit of motion. As long as you've got a little bit of motion, you can course correct. If you kind of go, it's not that, it's more this. But when you're at a full stop,
steering a parked car,
right? You can't do it. But the slightest bit of motion, right, opens up a world of opportunity. I would say find that bit of motion and align towards what only matters for you. Right. And I know there's times where we say, yeah, but you don't know, I got all these things and I've got this situation. I'm a single dad, single mom, single whatever. I've got all these. It's like, absolutely. But it won't change otherwise. Right. No amount of you can't outwork that situation. You can only change your direction.
Right. You can't out hustle it. You can't out muscle it.
Right.
You have to out decide it.
Right. How many people say, well, I'll outwork the problem.
Right.
Right. Well, all you do is work yourself to death. Like there's a point where effort alone will not cut it, right? The hustle culture is very much an early career kind of move, because that's all you got is energy, right? You don't actually have the experience or the skills or all this stuff, but you're like, I will work, watch this. And then you build these other things. The challenge is the hustle just keeps coming, and it's like, and it works well enough, but it doesn't scale. It doesn't align, right? It's not your compass. It's just, you're just driving faster and faster. You don't know if you're in the right direction or not.
Right. 100%. Such great advice. Again, Trevor, thank you for sharing your story with us and with our listeners. We hope you've enjoyed today's show. We do encourage you, if you're gleaning some great lessons from this, if you're resonating with what we're saying about living your best life, make sure you hit the subscribe button both here and on YouTube so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. If you know of somebody who could benefit from what we're sharing and the journey that we're on, maybe the journey that you're on, then we invite you to share it with them, get the word out so that more people can experience their best life. And we're putting constantly up on our website, we're putting up resources and tools, things that you can access to help you in this journey. Simply go to livingrichley.me/act to find those resources and avail yourself of them. We hope you've enjoyed today's show. Again, thank you, gentlemen, for another great conversation, and we hope to see you next time.